you. Thanks, everyone. So as Heather mentioned, if you have questions, blurt them out. There's no protocol here. Probably you're all able to take this conversation in a more interesting direction than I can present to you two-dimensionally. So if we want to divert, no problem at all. And I mentioned, it's not taught. Whoa, Michael, darling. it no switchy. Or do we have to do that? Be the next one over here. Tap it. Yep. Okay, I'll have to do it with those.
I found it.
Terrific. Okay.
It's the bottom.
Now it's
working.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm Jane. I wear many hats in the wool industry. I think many of you know me from my work with the Campaign for Wool, the Canadian Wool Council. Today, I'm kind of presenting under my own company's name because that is more pertinent, I think, to a commercial wool discussion. My company is OA Wool. OA stands for Ovis Aries, which is the Latin for sheep. And basically what OA Wool does is we will work with farmers to help them prepare their wool in a certain way. We will negotiate fair trade pricing for those farmers. We will bring the wool into the supply chain and we will take it through all those various steps of washing, spinning, dyeing, weaving, felting, turning it into products that are white labeled. The difference with this type of work, though, is our minimum quantities are 1,000 pounds of washed wool. That's about 1,500, 1,700 pounds of greasy wool. So it's a lot different than what the hand spinners are used to. It's a lot different than what the mini mills handle. We're doing something just a little bit bigger scale, so we bring our prices down. So let's talk about the wool industry in Canada. How does it operate? What are the obstacles and what's being done to correct those problems? First of all, we do have a domestic commercial industry. That's surprising to some people because our commercial industry is one that tends to not know that there is wool in Canada. It's these are processors who are buying British wool, New Zealand wool. They weren't aware that they could buy wool off of the farmers. So within the scope of our domestic industry, we have vertically integrated manufacturing. I presume most of you know what that is, but that's when one company owns the entire supply chain to produce their product, which is then put into the marketplace. We have commission milling. That's where it is one company that will take a lot of wool, a lot meaning like a quantity of wool, and it will process it for a fee, for a service fee. We have industry suppliers. That's kind of an unknown group of commercial processing. The best way I could describe that is if you imagine upholstery. You're a company that manufactures upholstery, but you don't want to invest in the equipment to do the piping. You'll outsource that piping. And there is a whole subsector of companies that do that type of supply to bigger milling or bigger vertically integrated operations. And we have some skilled labor, not a lot, but we have some. There's a reason to be optimistic. What are the roadblocks? I do want to say, I realize that's Valley Black Nose. And I realize that nobody here is probably farming Valley Black Nose. This is the criticism we get. Stock photography is what it is. They're very photogenic and they're the easiest photos we have access to. But I realize that is not typically what you are farming. If any of you know Campaign for Wool, Canadian Wool Council, we produced the Wool Plan 2021 to 2026, where we identified 5 roadblocks in the Canadian wool industry. I normally would have addressed those today, but since we're talking about commercial wool, it's not the same roadblocks. The roadblocks we have in commercial wool are consistency, our siloed supply chain, our skilled labor, and our shipping woes. Wool consistency, I want to give a little bit of time to that. We are not far off from being able to produce consistent wool, but what I would say is it takes all of Canada coming together to decide how we are going to shear, how we are going to skirt. how we are going to package and how we're going to move that wool. That's what makes my job easier. And that's what makes easier all of the other processes that go on after me. Right now, I've talked a lot about the importance of shearing for wool quality, not just to get the wool off of the animal, but avoiding second cuts, shearing in these long strokes, and packaging the wool in a way that you're skirting off most of the contamination. And then we can talk about other things on wool consistency, but right now I would say that the issue is just let's all agree on how we're going to be packaging this wool and start from there. And I think Ontario is a great trial province to do this in because you're all engaged, you're all very smart producers, you've all excelled at your meat production. And I think if there's any province in Canada right now who's positioned to bring in some type of management for wool consistency, it would be Ontario. I think this would be a good province to test. The siloed supply chain. This was something that surprised me so much when I started in the wool industry. I touched on it earlier. You go to our spinners don't know that Canada really has wool. They buy wool from Britain and New Zealand mostly. Our spinners don't often know what happens or what the needs are beyond spinning. And our producers don't know what the scourer needs. The scourer doesn't really know what the spinner needs. Nobody talks to anybody else on the supply chain. And this is where I've found a bit of success in this industry is because I'm not married to one silo on the supply chain, I can go and talk to you folks on farm. I can go and talk to the spinners. I'm mobile and I can create those bridges. And it came naturally, and just in doing that, in talking to different commercial processors, they said, oh, we can't get Canadian wool. Yes, you can. Oh, but it's not the kind of wool we need. Yes, it is. Oh, where do we get this wool? Ooh, hold on. We're going to get the wool for you, and you're actually going to pay a little bit more for it, but here's how it's going to wash out in the end. So that siloed supply chain, something that we have to really work on. Skilled labor, of course, people who know how to grade wool, judge wool, prepare wool, shearers who know how to shear for wool quality. We have great shearers in Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of them have not had access to training with masters who are used to shearing for wool. And the other thing I've also known or understood when I talk to a lot of shearers is they're there to shear and not to do the wool grading or the sorting or anything like that. That's off their jurisdiction. Often that wool packaging, that's happening by the producer themselves, by their kids, by other farm volunteers, and the education to do that properly just isn't there. And I don't need to tell you about shipping woes. We all know that Canada's a big country. We've got big transportation issues, and we have to start solutioning things in regions across Canada, not just a big, it doesn't make sense when you're in Alberta to be shipping wool to the east. So that's something that we need to address as well. What's being done to fix these problems? There's a lot of people who are working on these problems. I listed a few of them here, and I wanted to touch on the importance of each one. Woolmark. Woolmark typically deals in merino. We think this has nothing to do with us. Not true. Woolmark, even this year, was instrumental in getting sheep's wool turned into upholstery with Volvo, for the Volvo SUV. That's an amazing development that's happened. And our wool is good for upholstery, especially in the transportation sector. So Woolmark, they might have merino on the brain, but all the work that they're doing is bringing value to everything that we do. And they have the budget to do this type of work. So we like them. International Wool Textile Organization. I'm working on a working group with them at the moment where we are helping distributors and retailers sell better wool carpet and wool bedding. So we're giving them data on how to treat moths. We're giving them data on how to care and clean carpets. We're giving them longevity information, durability information, which previously they didn't have. A lot of carpet retailers are selling synthetic broadloom. They're thinking wool is too hard to manage, it's too complicated, you can't clean it, etc. Nothing could be further from the truth. So IWTO, that's one of the organizations that are really reaching out to those sellers. Campaign for Wool, Campaign for Wool and Canadian Wool Council in Canada, We have a Campaign for Wool office, and they're doing a lot of outreach with the consumer. So they're telling your farm story in a way that is, I think, inspiring consumers. It's getting people's attention. I think Matthew Rowe, the CEO of Campaign for Wool Canada, Canadian Wool Council, is doing a great job to spotlight everything that's wonderful about our industry. And I think sometimes Campaign for Wool and Canadian Wool Council get feedback that the story doesn't actually reflect your realities on the farm. And what I would say is, I think that we're all aware of your realities on the farm, but we're packaging that in a way that we can get the highest price for a wool product in the market, which then allows us to come back and pay a higher price at the farm gate for the wool. So there's a bit of a method to the madness. The pretty videos and stuff that you see, there's a strategy behind it, and that is to really pique people's imaginations. The other is Responsible Wool Standard, Make the Label Count. Those are all global organizations that are helping to ease the perception that it's cruel to shear sheep. Governments, our provincial and federal governments, are investing a lot in innovation, and so now we're trying to encourage them to invest in wool innovation, in equipment, those sorts of things. They're doing their bit. Not enough, we can argue, but they're doing some. And our sellers, resellers, and consumers are starting to ask for these products. They're starting to ask for products that are biodegradable, safe for the environment, etc. So I think that they're starting to do their jobs as well to help unblock some of our roadblocks.
Do you have a class that
At the moment, no. We have somebody, Helen Nib, PhD. She is going on farm and offering wool preparation courses on shearing day. We set up mock shearing situations, and she helps producers learn how to start doing a better triage of the wool on farm. Right now, what I'm doing is working directly with the farmer. I understand what they are able to produce. We send it to be scoured. Our scourer does their type of grading, which is an A, B, or C grading, which is very rudimentary, but it's what we need for now to get it into our pipeline. In a perfect world, yes, we would have graders, but there aren't so many of those, and they're not quick to train up either. Great question, though. Thank you. Is there hope? Yeah, there's hope. But first, hope is not a strategy. There is no industry today that's operating optimally. The oil and gas industry is not operating optimally. Neither is healthcare, neither is education, neither is transportation. Nobody is. Why do we think that wool should be operating at peak performance? The world is a bit mixed up today. I would also add to that, if we want to get our wool working in a better way, we can't keep doing the same thing that we've always been doing. So we have to adapt to what's available to us today, modern circumstances, and we have to stay agile. And I think the most important thing is there's not one solution for this problem, and there's not one person who's going to solve it. It requires different people doing different things. It requires the mini mills to be able to do what the mini mills do best. But a mini mill cannot handle 1,000 pounds of wool. It requires the fiber sheds to bring community together with that kind of community focus. Wonderful. A fiber shed is not going to solve the 20,000 pounds of wool you have in the loft of your barn. And then it requires folks like me and our processors to help solution what are we going to do with these larger volumes of wool. And that's the stage that we're at now, and everyone has a role to play in it. So I'm not here to take over the wool world any more than Wool Growers is taking over the wool world, or CSF is taking over the wool world, or OSF. We all have a role, and there's a place for all of us. And if anybody here wants to improve their wool clip, if they want to start marketing their wool, there's lots of hope to do that. If they want to make a career out of wool, whether it be in farming or whether they want to do the type of work that I do, there's room for it as well. So that's kind of the speech I wanted to make on the wool industry as it is. Now I thought we'd do quickly, I've got about 10 minutes. Here's something that I thought was interesting. These are the common breeds of sheep in Ontario. They probably look familiar to you. You see the percentages. This was pulled off of the OMAFRA website.
I think that's registered now. That is?
Yeah, well, these are the most common breeds, and this is the percentage of registrations. But largely, these are the breeds that are dominating in Ontario.
Yeah, I think, so that's actually probably maybe not representative of the full flock.
Okay, okay.
Because the registered animals and the commercial animals are significantly different.
Yeah, well, the commercial animals are often crosses as well. So it's hard for us to get a population of, and I mean, Romanoff, we put Romanoff in there. Romanoff is the big unknown in Canada. Nobody knows actually how many Romanoff are on the ground because most of the Romanoffs, other than breeding stock, aren't registered. But they can actually affect our wool numbers because they don't have their hair breed. They don't have a wool that is generally prized in like a purely wool processing. So
Don't wait on Canada like that.
I love Roman. I love Roman.
I know a lot of people. Yeah. And as we've noticed, their hides tan beautifully. So then when we look at wool application by breed, this is what I found interesting as well. From the previous slide, just take a snapshot in your mind of those breeds. We're orange, Dorset, Hampshire, Southdown, Suffolk. Those are all common breeds that we're used to seeing. These are all in the 26 to 29 micron range. What have you heard about Canadian wool? Are fibers too coarse? It's only good for insulation. Can't do anything with it. Not true. Not true. 26 to 29 microns makes the most luxurious carpet you can imagine. It makes really wonderful blankets. It makes really great upholstery, really versatile upholstery. And we can do a really high price point, a consumer sticker price that's very advantageous for producers if we switch up a little bit how we are charging for our wool. So in that medium range, we've got a lot of that covered. And then in the 30 plus micron range, all the ones that are underlined are breeds that are present in Canada. So to me, I see that the only thing we don't have is merino, is the next to skin wool. Everything else we've got. So I don't really buy it when people say, oh, Canada doesn't have wool or our wool's not good quality. Here's the proof right here. No. And yeah. Well, exactly. And Australia did such a great job at branding the breed. And I think it's incredibly dangerous to brand the breed. All of our breeds are useful. And surprisingly, we have the capacity to process it. Yeah, well, the Ritos, they weren't pegged here because the Rito is a Canadian breed. And this was from an international template, which you can't see the link to it. I don't even see the link. Yeah, there is. Well, I thought that chart was just kind of a good example of what we have here. Like you see, we have these breeds here, and these are the majority of the products that they're used for. So in the last 5 minutes, what I'd like to do is show you a vision for the next, say, 2 years plus for how we increase the value of your wool. Dang, it's my old version. Okay, imagine that this is 0 to 18 months. This is like your next year and a half. And you're all going to get this to take home so you can play with it. But what I'll show you here is I just did some different modeling. So let's say you have 100 sheep that you're shearing. And let's say that your average sheep is going to give you 7 pounds. And let's say that wool's kind of dirty, so you're going to be skirting off about 10% of that. And let's say you're putting that in a jute bag that costs you $2. And let's say that bag, you're going to get 250 pounds in it. Now, for those of you who are experts, you're going to say, I normally get 230 pounds and somebody else is going to get 270. But for the sake of argument, 250 pounds. And let's say you got a really nice shearer and he's shearing for you for $5 a head. And let's say 68% is the yield that we're getting after washing. And let's say I'm willing to pay you $1. We have 700 pounds of wool. We're going to take off 10% at the farm, and that's going to leave us with 630 pounds. Okay. Then we're going to send it to the scourer, and we're going to get 68% of that wool back clean. That brings us down to 365 pounds of wool. Your shearing cost for 100 head at $5 is $500. Your bag costs roughly $6. Your shearing cost is $506. And if I'm paying you $1 for that wool for 365 clean pounds, your revenue is $365. So you're losing about $141. One could argue that it's better than nothing at all, because right now you're looking at your shearing as just the cost of doing business. So we start with that. And then I jumped ahead. Now, this is 1.5 to 2 years, 2.5. And let's change up the variables a bit. So I imagined 200 head. And let's say you get 8 pounds of wool off of it. Let's just say that you kind of modified your breeding. You had a couple of rams that had really nice wool and you decided to breed with them as opposed to a ram. You know, as they've always said, if you have 2 rams and they both have the same carcass quality, the same conformation, but one has nicer fleece, well, breed with the one with the nicer fleece. So let's say you're getting up to 8 pounds of wool coming off of your animal. And by the way, when you look at the breeds in Canada and you look at the average fleece weights, some of them will be 4 or 5 pounds, but a lot of them, the average fleece weights are 8, 9 pounds. So 8 statistically is not unimaginable. And let's say we got a little bit better with taking care of the animals out, a few less burdock maybe, and we are now taking only 7% off of the sheep at off the fleece at the farm gate. Let's say you start packing in the square totes. The big totes, they're a little bit more expensive, but you're putting 370 pounds in it. Your shearer's gone up in price a little bit. He's charging you $6 now. And your yield's a little bit better. You're getting 70% clean wool back. And I can probably put that in the market at $1.50 clean. So you see how it works out. You have 1,600 pounds of wool. Once you're skirting and bagging, you're down to $14.88. Once it's washed, it's down to $1,041. Shearing costs are $1,200. That's your $6 a head times your 200 sheep. $40 for your square totes. Your total cost, $12.40. Your producer revenue from $1.50 of 1,000 pounds of clean wool gives you a profit of $3.22. So we're getting there. Now let's go a little bit further ahead. What? Labor, well, okay. How do you calculate your time now? How do you bill it in with your fleece price? Okay, so we'll do that the next time I do this round. Nobody has ever said to me, what about my time? Because, well, you typically don't. You're absolutely right. Well, you're totally right. And it's the same argument that I make when I'm a consultant going onto the farm. A lot of the producers I deal with don't think that my time is worth anything because for them, revenue is meat. Revenue is your byproduct. It's not the time that you put into it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's a great point. We'll add that into the next version.
And I would actually, that shearing cost, that somebody's skirting, somebody bagging it.
Do you pay them?
I don't do it. But yes, you have, you should, for this, you should pay.
My son went back.
Yeah, you should pay. Yeah.
And so right now, I guess that's just the cost of business, doing business on the meat. Okay.
And for every shear, there has to be 2 people.
Yeah, and most of the time, well, and this is exactly the problem is we don't have, okay, yeah, your son's getting paid great. Normally it's farm family that are doing it. Topsy Farms, who I work with a lot, they do a volunteer circle that helps. That's not maybe the top of the line sorting, skirting kind of thing, but that's what some farms do. I just wanted to get you to a point where you could feel optimistic is all, but we will, well, okay. It could. So now I realize we're moving the numbers around a little bit here. And let's say we have 500. Some of you are going to say, well, we don't even have 500 a shear. Some people will say, I regularly shear blocks of 500. It's an example. We came back down to the 7 pounds. So we're not at the 8 pounds, we come back to 7 pounds. We're skirting off 8%, skirting off a little bit more than we were in the previous model, but we're still kind of mixing it up. Still in the square totes, $8, putting 370 pounds in that tote. Your shearer's gone up in price. He's now $650, or she, sorry. And where our yield is at 70%. Now, let's say that we have this relationship going, you and me, and I know, you know what I need, and I know what you can offer. So I'm comfortable with all that. I can start paying you $2. And you see how the numbers work out. And we're into 1186 as a profit. And we're not that far off. We're not that far off from being here to where we are today. The jump is a very small jump to make. I can tell you that earlier this week, I was talking with a group of investors who know nothing about farming, nothing about sheep, nothing about wool. They're just getting their feet wet in the American industry because they are investors in an apparel company that uses only natural fiber. And when I told them the story of Canadian wool and most of the Ontario farmers that I'm working with, they all said, there is no problem with the prices that we're charging for our things and the popularity of our garments and our products. There is no reason why we can't be giving $2, $3, $4 a pound back. But we need the collaboration of the people on the ground. So to that, I say, yeah, there's hope. Yes, we can get there. It doesn't take very much time, but it takes cooperation. And it just takes a willingness to erase what we know from the past. Canadian wool is not worth anything. Canada doesn't have wool. It's not worth our time. It's easier to burn it. Costs too much to truck. Gas is too expensive. All those excuses. If you want to help the industry start here and go up, you just got to erase all of that old thinking, that old mentality. And there are people in the industry who are working to solution the transportation issue. They are looking to solution the high cost of shearing. They are looking to find ways to bring down the cost of that $8 wool tote. We have the patterns to make wool totes, those square pack totes. We have the actual pattern to sew them here. We just have to find the people who are willing to buy the roll of the material, and we can start producing them here in Ontario, if that's something that's important to you. It's there. All the solutions are in front of us. It's just a matter of, like I said, wiping out the old way of thinking about things, the old rhetoric, the old Canada's wool's got to go to China, it's not worth anything. We have no business being in the commodities market with our wool in the first place. Like, bust that off the table as an option. We don't have enough wool to compete in a commodities market. We don't have enough. Our wool is too good a quality and too niche a quantity that we can't be playing that game. We have to find a new game. And that's the game where we're getting to $2, $3, $4 a pound because we're collaborating. You're collaborating with all the other silos on the processing chain. And then it's my job to go explain to those processors, no, it's not all about you. It's all of us together. So don't complain to me about inconsistent wool. We're going to get there. And that's just, I guess, where we're at the moment. So I think that there is a great future for where we're going. The mission remains the same, to rebrand and revalue Canadian wool, to advocate for our industry here, and to foster that demand for homegrown luxury. The last thing I guess I would say that kind of just popped into my head is, I think we need to take off the table wool for the masses. You're never going to have a $2 pair of wool socks. We don't want that. It's up to other people to solve our synthetic, polluting fast fashion industry. But for what we need to be able to pay you what you deserve to do the job you need to do with your wool, we need to be having products in the marketplace that don't have sticker shock. So when I wrote the upholstery plan for Canadian Wool Council, we looked at upholstery in private jets. There's no sticker shock in upholstery in private jets. If we are able to produce the right type of fabric to cover those seats, and It is the right size industry for what we have. We know there's 790 private jets going into the airspace every year. We know on average those jets have 19 seats. We know one seat requires about 2 meters of upholstery. That is such a manageable amount of wool that we need, and we're able to produce that. And when you look at what the price of that upholstery is going to be once it gets to the end user, they're not going to care whether it's $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 a pound. Those are the scenarios we've got to get to. Like trying to sell for 30 cents, that's just foolish for the quality of wool that we have.
Basically,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
well, so you're giving us like, this is where that being set up, or is that set up, or is that like?
That's,
I guess you're sort of in there.
I am,
doing all this work.
yeah.
Are there teams already there, ready to go?
Yes.
Like this week? Okay. I mean, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Like,
Yeah. So there's a couple of little avenues that we can do this in. I can give you the model that I've agreed with Trillium. So we have some goals for the Trillium producers wool, and then we have my lovely colleague Helen Nibb, who is going on farm. She is helping them prepare the wool in a way that makes it easier to get it into the supply chain. And then we have for the next 24 months some set prices that we're going to ask for their wool, and then we move that wool into the supply chain. Now, I'll also step off, like I guess, off my script a little bit. I started working for the Campaign for Wool, Canadian Wool Council several years ago now, and I got hired to write the wool plan, the shearing plan, the upholstery plan, the carpet plan, and a bunch of other strategies. And every time we ran the numbers, it worked. Every time we did a feasibility study, it worked. People want these products. We have the right fiber for those products. And we're like, great, we put these feasibility studies out into the public domain. Anybody can pick them up. They can run with it. Nobody did. And I have all this information in my head. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to go take all of my learning. I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to do it for you. And I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to say, okay, these are my promises to you. This is where I want to take the industry. I want to get you from the $1 to $1.50 into the $2, into the $3, into the $4. And I see that happening. I get calls every week. I'm working with a new designer in Toronto. He came out with a wonderful leather slipper during COVID that he sells for $400 Canadian. Huge success. Now he wants socks to go with it, and he wants felt to go with it. So we're prototyping all of this for him now with Ontario Farms in the Ontario story. And it's a winner. He's like, it seems like this is an emerging thing. And I'm like, yeah, it is. He said, I want to be in first. The investors I talked to were from Vancouver. They're like, we want to be in on this at the ground level. Tell us what we need to do. Like, it's just that our silos aren't connected. You folks don't get to hear that every day. I get to hear it every day. So I come to meetings like this and I try and explain, this is what I'm hearing. This is why I have hope. The plans that I did for Campaign for Wool, Canadian Wool Council, Matthew Rowe has been wonderful at getting financing for those feasibility studies. So it gave me the time and access to the resources I needed to be able to build solid plans. And by all accounts, look, we are producing carpets now with Canadian wool. In our prototyping, we had Ontario wool that was spun and dyed at Briggs & Little in New Brunswick, and then it was sent to Nepal to work with hand knotters in Nepal. The hand knotters in Nepal said that our wool was the softest wool they've ever worked with in this micron range. Therefore, it was nicer on the hands, nicer to the touch, and retained the color depth better. Yeah, the angels are singing. Like, it's a great story. Those rugs now sell for between 5,000 and I think 18,000. And there's a demand for them. Now, Campaign for Wool, Canadian Wool Council is doing a collaboration with Burritt Brothers and Hereditary Chief Janice George in Vancouver to produce Canadian wool rugs in Coast Salish weaving patterns. Burritt Brothers is one of North America's largest carpet distributors, wool carpet distributors. They also have the brand Nature's Carpet, if you've ever heard of that. They have 4,000 distributors in North America. It's it's a beautiful story. And then we keep pushing the carpet story. Some people say, well, our wool's too good for carpets. Well, no, it actually makes a very luxurious, very expensive, high quality, durable carpet that people are putting in their Hermes showrooms, in their Dior showrooms, in the nicest ballrooms, in casinos and conference centers around the world. It's being installed in embassies around the world. It's being put in cruise ships. Like, our wool is a great quality for that as well.
Look, I love what you're saying.
Tell me why it doesn't work for you. Okay.
And I think you're right. I'm willing to go along with it. I think where we have to start is we have to go to the tier, tell them, you have to start telling your farmer you do not ship tags and you do not ship
Amen.
necks that are full of vegetative matter. We don't care what you do with it. You can turn around and the wool growers say they can sell anything, we'll send it to them and let them move it. The amount of time and labor that you would save just not having to handle that 15% of the fleece would be a damn good place to start.
I agree with you. Amen. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I can tell you with our first shipment that we sent to the UK, it did have a little bit too much contamination in it. So great lesson learned. When we ran the numbers after and we saw how much more efficient our process could be if we did a better skirting on farm. I keep pointing here because I'm still pointing back to my other screen. If we had done a better skirting on farm, we would have had more high quality wool going in that container. So that's a great lesson learned. Now we're course correcting that. But you're right, you need.
I think if they're gonna get it, $1, I think most large have like sort of larger amount. I think you'd be okay with having that extra, even just knowing that.
Yeah.
And not those numbers that I did it, but they're, it's let's the profit.
Would be extra. Yeah.
Out a little bit in that extra labor.
Mm. Well, and you really have two choices as producers, right? You can have somebody broker the wool off your farm and you don't think about it again, or you can find a pathway for your wool. Like Romy, she's taking her own wool and she is having it produced into products. I'm happy to say I work with Romy, and I think that that's a really viable model. So it's either way. It's how much effort do you want to put in, and that will be your return. Romy will get more return for her products, for her wool business, because she is actually going and selling directly to the consumer at that higher price point. Well, hopefully those hours will come down. Yeah. Or if you're just, if you're a meat breeder and you just want that wool off your property, we can do that too. And we'll find a way, and Jen helps as well. Jen will take dags. She will take part of that wool that is not meant to go in the supply chain that I'm working in. So I think we come back to the, you know, there are many solutions and many roles that people have to play in this. And if we all come together collaboratively, I think there is a fantastic cohesive story that can come out of Ontario wool. I'm not at all discouraged by it.
Are you working, like with individual farmers? Like you said, you're working with the trillium.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I work with Topsy.
You've been doing this for a while. But I'm like, I live alone. So I'm like,
Well, it's been COVID.
I do.
COVID changed everything.
If anyone, if just our random farmers in Ontario that have, you know, of you and what you're doing.
They probably don't.
No, and this is huge
Hmm.
for us. And there's a communication gap. But I'm also very, very
That's why I was gonna give
That's-
you a.
Right,
No,
but
it's
because
like
a
lot of industry has actually has not said anything about wolves last.
we don't know. Yeah, and it's been a shame.
Yeah.
It is a shame, and
Nothing's been
it's,
said. Because like that silence.
yeah,
No one talked. Yeah, no,
Um,
we were here with Fibershed. 10 years ago.
yeah. So do you work on behalf of the co-op? No.
They don't like me, I don't think.
So-
I was a little scared coming here today, to be honest with you.
I love collaboration detail of our industries. And is there a way, I know we have to sort of work through you set up actual collaborations with mills and stuff that you can work
Yeah.
with them and not like, here's my well. have
No,
at
no, no,
it.
no, no,
You
no,
know what
no.
I mean?
I hold everyone's hand. Like,
Do whatever they want to do with it. Like some like Romy want to.
yeah,
Others, it's like, I would love to tell the story that, oh, this is going to wherever that.
yeah, in
BC,
BC.
That's a huge story of wool. People would love to hear that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and this is,
Right?
this is the
But-
same thing with the sock company. This is the
Yeah.
same with all these other groups that we're dealing with, like Topsy's wool blanket. But Topsy contacted me and they said, we want to be able to produce a king blanket. That's our goal, with no seam down the middle. Can you build us a supply chain? So that's what I did for Topsy. And Topsy and I, our relationship deepened as we went. But that's not a relationship that I'm just going to copy and paste with everybody. I'm not,
And nor should.
no. Everybody has different needs. And it might just be that all you need is to help find a way to get your wool washed. And then whatever your dream is, if you want your wool manufactured into French products, Jane, can you figure out how to get my wool washed and find somebody that's going to manufacture it in France because I want the little French flag on it? Whatever, we can do that. With the Trillium Group, we looked at what they needed. They told me, well, this works for us, this doesn't work for us. So we adapted, we figured out, because the goal is not my ego. The goal is not for me to be any type of savior here. The goal is, what do you need, and what does the scourer need, and what does the spinner need, and what does the dyer need, and then what comes after that? Yeah.
Needed, obviously.
And I can bring the message back to each one of these people too. Oh, I'd love to do stuff in Manitoba. I'm based in Quebec. Yeah, so hold your Quebec jokes, please. I come in peace. I can say that the Quebec industry, while they might be very strong with meat, they are not there yet with wool. They have a long way to go. Ontario has been low-hanging fruit. You guys have been the smartest at marketing your farm businesses. You have been the easiest to get in touch with. You're the easiest to collaborate with. So I kind of use Ontario as my prototype province, but there is no reason why Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta can't follow suit. I'm from the Maritimes originally, so I have, you know, a little piece of my heart's in Nova Scotia. I work with a lot of the Nova Scotia breeders. I work with the Nova Scotia abattoir. We look at different ways to help them be a little bit more profitable. We've proposed some sheep hide tannery, organic sheep hide tannery concepts to them. And that's another thing we haven't even talked about is all the potential we have around organic sheep hide tanning. There's lots of great feasibility studies where we can be taking our very nice sheep hide and putting it in the decor sector, in the fashion sector, or in the industrial sector. You know, floor polishers at the airport, you know, the highest prized tissue that they're polishing with is real sheep hide, real sheepskin. So it's cut in a circle, and then it's got a Velcro kind of component that attaches onto the machine, and that's what you see cleaning airports and shopping malls. Same as paint rollers. We were talking about this earlier, weren't we? The paint roller, if you have an abattoir that, let's say, doesn't have a mechanical puller, so they're doing hand skinning of the animal, and there's little nicks and tears everywhere. Perhaps the animal's had some injections before, so you're still seeing some puncture marks in the skin. What better than paint rollers? Professional painters will pay 100 up to $200 for a paint roller made of real sheep hide. The pile is cut down to a nap of about 15 millimeters, I think, 1.5 centimeters. Depends on the paint, depends on the texture you're looking for. And it's a very simple, like rectangle, I guess you would say. Then you would find your environmentally friendly tube to roll it on. Hopefully it's some type of compound that's not plastic, but these can wash for years afterwards. Whereas the synthetic rollers, they get thrown out. I mean, how many times do you wash your paint roller after you've used one of those cheap paint rollers from the hardware store? Maybe twice, maybe till the end of your job, and then after that, they don't work anymore. But these last forever. The professionals are paying a higher price point for it. It's a great fit for our sheep hide, the types, the breeds that we are harvesting. It's beautifully. It's another great story. But people don't know, but people don't know also on a commercial level, this is something that we did not know before because we haven't been processing commercially, is our commercial processors have a greater tolerance for contamination than a mini mill model or smaller processing model. So, I mean, the story I've told over and over again, probably to you people, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but when we sent our wool over to England to wash and it came back, it still had contamination in it. And I was really quite devastated. I'm like, oh, we can't use it. And then I sent it to real commercial processors and they're like, Jane, that's what wool looks like. That's what wool looks like. For us, or what a hand spinner would say is a throwaway, it's like, no, we're gonna weave that up, we're gonna carbonize it, and you're gonna have like a luxury product out of that. Don't even think a second thing about it.
And manufacturing that Jane's explaining, it is a whole different level and they can actually deal with a lot. Like it's talking sheet. And it's just when you go to a mini mill, and as wonderful as they are, they will only take because they need that.
They're limited. And like that time, like I think really doesn't.
It would be more, it
But
would be more
compared to
people.
what a kid
Yeah.
wants,
Oh,
like it can like.
Oh, yeah,
This
yeah.
is our.
No,
No.
and we got a lot of.
And so and
Yeah.
that's exactly the education that we're missing too. It's the know-how, what needs to come off, what doesn't need to come off. And we're going to get there. I can't give you those answers right now. Helen is learning a little bit for our purposes, what that requires, but it's all a work in progress. Michael, you're cutting me off?
A little bit. It is break time, but you guys.
Okay.
Wrap it up. It just started break.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, you'll all get a copy of this and you can call me or you can email me. We can set up times to talk if you're interested. I already am bombarded.
One of the biggest challenges actually, nobody talks about it. And what is actually beautiful about wool as a natural product is different levels of processing, different types of wool. Nothing should go away, whether it be pellets, whether or not it be industrial, non-white fiction. That's what actually all that. Whether or not it goes to upholstery, whether or not it goes to blanket, whether or not it goes to clothing, it should all be used. There is no way. Period. Some of it can go into bioplastic. Some of it can go into polymers. Like, there's so many things that we are very far behind because there's been one full message for the last week. Like, I mean, really.
that's very much the case. In this area. If you look around at all the setup, you know, spend a lot of money on sheep, a lot of money on barns, they won't set up facilities, not only for the shearing, for handling the wool afterwards. How many barns do you go in that have skirting days? How many you go into a barn? How many people have baggers?
For what reason?
Well, yeah,
That makes sense in town, why bother? Or nothing.
or nothing. Well, and even, you know, my, a gal who's been a great support to me, a great mentor is Lisa Serber. And she always says, use a round skirting table. She said, I can skirt and braid a fleece in, was like 11 seconds. She's got 11 seconds and she has 3 shears working and thrown on 3 tables and she can skirt and evaluate that quickly. That's how fast it goes.
How it was done, you have absolutely no idea what you're dealing with.
Yeah, when you learn to coordinate, exactly. Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't gone into a setup and saw how it was done.
yeah. Yeah, well, and it's a real, I find it's a real dance when you watch I've watched lots and I have not been to Australia and New Zealand, but I've watched lots and lots of shearing videos when I was writing the shearing plan. And it really is, it's a ballet that you see between anybody who's sweeping, who's pulling the fleece out once it goes on the table. If you have that coordinated effort and everybody knows what everybody else is doing and the shearing station is properly set up, you're not going to be looking at as much labor or as much drudgery that I think is perceived to be the process now. Yeah, so I take it, sir, that you are a shearer? Have we met before through the shearing plan?
I honestly don't know. I know your name, but
Okay,
I think I went to one of your talks.
okay,
I don't,
okay. Well, yeah, so
I'm the loud. I'm the one that.
yeah, I figured that. No, yeah, the shearing plan, I worked on it for about 6 months. It was a very difficult plan to write. Met with a lot of resistance. It wasn't always pleasant. I don't believe anything unblocked. However, what came out of it is a core group of, I would say, 5 or 6 people who are serious about standardizing the industry from east to west. And that's the other thing that was my big hope for the shearing industry too, is I would like all shearers to be shearing in the same manner so that, you know, just consistency is where we're going to have a lot of efficiency. So, you know, you have one shearer saying, well, I don't like to shear like that. This is my own style. Well, that's great, but I don't want you teaching the people who are going to be shearing for my wool projects because you don't care about second cuts. You just care about efficiently getting the wool off the sheep and moving on. And
At one time I thought there were 2 different systems. Now I've seen internet, seen at least 7.
yeah,
The last one was sheet flat and packed, 4-foot wide sheet. On the one end, they've got it tied and sheets upside down, guys standing on the neck and peering away from. I've never seen them. Never seen them. No, this was shearing a ramblay, and that sheet was kicking so much that I didn't
it's going to hurt
understand
itself.
how he.
I think
Yes, that's standardized. Has to come.
it has to
If
come, and
somebody starts, and not cheering no one, it starts it one of his many ways. It is damn hard to get him switched.
yeah.
Just do it.
Well, and also, you know, not to split hairs, but a lot of our shearers here in Canada, well, there's a couple of things that I noticed with our shearers. A lot of them work part-time, seasonally, and underground. So they don't want anybody to know that they're shearing. They have a few clients that they work with. Beyond that, a lot of our shearers have learned from their fathers and grandfathers. So there's a long line of a technique that's come through, and it might not be the best one for the type of wool that we're dealing with. And one of the things that our shearing plan proposed was being able to create opportunities for Canadian shearers to go to Falkland, to go to New Zealand, to go to Australia, to go to Britain, to go to South Africa and learn high volume shearing.
I'm running 2 shearing schools a year and it's shearing schools for beginners.
Yeah. People are interested in
And-
learning.
The amount of time and trouble it's taken me to find the instructors who are going to get with my program
Yeah.
to do it consistently. Now, they're shearing a little bit different because I learned 40 years ago and 43 years ago, and things have changed since I've learned.
Yeah.
They've been down under and learned more water, but